Hello YouTube, hello Doctor Who fans, this is The Observer and this is the episode review of Doctor Who The Cold War. But before I start with retelling what happened in the episode, I would really like to talk about the man behind this episode, Mark Gatiss. Well, you might know Mark Gatiss as the person who is a good buddy with actually Steven Moffat, and he actually co-created the Sherlock series with him. But he's actually very much important to the Doctor Who franchise. When the series got in hiatus and before it got rebooted in 2005, Mark Gatiss was one of the few writers keeping the torch alive of the Doctor Who. He was writing novels and audiobooks and many other things, radio plays, many other things that will keep the Doctor Who name alive. And in that perspective, he's very important. And he also, when the series got rebooted, he was also a writer who actually wrote in every season except the third season. In every season he has written at least one episode, so he is very important because of that. But I personally am not a huge fan of the writing of the Mark Gatiss. I think it's too dull. But many people like his writings. Many people like his episodes. I'm not a fan, but you know, I'm just a single guy. The way the Mark Gatiss writes Doctor Who episode, it can fall under the two patterns. The first pattern is he writes historical Doctor Who episodes, like the Unquiet Dead with Charles Dickens, like the Victory of the Daleks with Churchill and Second World War. Or he likes to write horror Doctor Who episodes, like the Idiot's Lantern, like the Night Terrors. And now in the 7th season we are also going to have two Mark Gatiss episodes, and they also fall under those patterns. The first is this Cold War, who is a historical episode. I mean, it happens during the Cold War era. And the second will be the Crimson Horror. I have no idea what's happening in that episode, but by the title pretty much suggests it's going to be a horror. So, as I said, he's really important, but I'm not a fan. And this episode, the Cold War, really goes two ways in the meaning. I mean, it actually tells about the Cold War era, I mean. And secondly, it could be a metaphor for the Ice Warriors in this episode. And now let me tell more about what happened in this episode. I really dislike this part. I really don't like talking what happens in the episode, but I must. It's important part of the review. The episode starts with a Soviet submarine being discovered something in the depths of the ocean. They suspect it's a mammoth, but it actually is not. It's an alien from the Mars. It's the Ice Warriors. And small trivia: the only time in rebooted series when the Ice Warriors were mentioned were in with 10th Doctor, a special, the Water on Mars, when he saw the water, you know, the gigantic ice water in the one part of the episode. He said, "Aha, probably the Ice Warriors live there." But that's from that. They haven't really appeared. So the Ice Warrior awakes from the ice, which is really strange, but nonetheless. And he really goes on a rampage, you know, killing the crew members. And somehow, because of that, the submarine starts to float down, to sink down in the ocean. And from nowhere, of course, Doctor, TARDIS and the Clara appears. When Doctor realizes that what they're dealing with is Ice Warrior, he figures out, well, you know, they're warriors, they're a proud race, but they're not really that dangerous. But then, of course, he asks, "Who are you?" And he says, "Well, I'm the Skullduck." And Doctor realizes that the Skullduck is someone who is very dangerous, you know, the most fearsome Ice Warrior in the history of Mars. And, you know, they chain him up. Doctor Who has a dialogue with the captain of the ship and with some other guy who is also a high-ranking officer, and the professor. So sort of, and you know, Doctor is speaking that the Ice Warrior is a dangerous person, and because they attacked him, they pretty much caused a war between the Ice Warriors and the human race, because Ice Warriors goes by the principle, if you attack one of us, you attack all of us. And this won't be an episode if the Ice Warrior didn't escape from his chains and, you know, start killing the crew members, to dissecting them, analyzing them. And in the meantime, he realized that this is the period of time that if he launched a nuke anywhere on the Earth, I mean, he would cause a third world war, and he would cause many deaths. You know, he would like to create another red planet, same like Mars, but this one will be red with the human blood. And you know, Doctor and both all crew members failed to stop the Ice Warrior. Ice Warrior is about to launch a nuclear bomb, and you know, Doctor has a talk with him, and when he realized that he is not the last survival of his race, and because he's a proud warrior, so the Ice Warrior decides that he will not like to blow Earth up. He peacefully decides that he doesn't want to do that and leaves the submarine with his people, and happy end. So I'm really bad at retelling what happened in the episode, so I'm much better at analysis. Like I said previously, I'm really not a big fan of the writing of Mark Gatiss, and it's the same with this episode. I mean, it was okay episode, it's not bad, it doesn't have bad points at all, but it had a lot more potential than Mark Gatiss used. You know, when I'm thinking about, you know, submarine and, you know, ocean depths and sort of stuff, the first thing that to me falls in mind is claustrophobia, isolation, lack of space, and especially that claustrophobia rises up when the submarine starts sinking in the depths, and because, you know, you're closer to death and everything you fear starts to become stronger and stronger. And this is actually what happened in episode. You know, the submarine started sinking, but there was no claustrophobia among people, there is no fear among people, there is no discontainment among people at all. And, you know, he could have used some of that, you know, to make the more drama in this episode, because the only drama in this episode was, you know, was Ice Warrior, which is really shameful because what we have here. Secondly of which is the really lack of the what could this episode be. You know, we have this captain who in the beginning is, you know, he likes to be authoritative person, strict person, but in the end you realize that, well, that's just a mask, you know, he's actually a lovely jubbly guy behind the mask. And I expected that during some point in this episode the people will start sort of rebelling, you know, sort of being afraid, sort of, you know, sort of doing what they like, you know. How many people will actually believe in 83 you'd say, oh, okay, we have a Martian on our submarine? How many people will actually say, oh yeah, Martian, yeah, of course, we're going to defeat him? No, many people think that Captain is going insane, the Captain is going crazy. But there was nothing of that, and by the time episode flows, the Captain's role really sinks when the Doctor comes, because in the end he just ends up to be a guy with a beard and nothing less. It more seemed that the Doctor was the captain of this submarine, which is really shameful. We could have a lot more character development if, you know, this captain challenges Doctor in some way. So that's really bad. Third thing I disliked. Well, I read on Wikipedia. I read that the Moffat was first reluctant to create an episode with Ice Warriors, because, you know, in the previous Doctor Who seasons, I mean, not when the series got rebooted, but the old seasons with the old Doctors, the Ice Warriors episodes were usually regarded as trash episodes. I mean, regarded with the very poorly written. The Ice Warriors were not interesting at all as a villains, and if you ask me, they are right. I mean, we already had the warrior type aliens in Doctor Who. It's nothing new. It's nothing, you know. the concept is really not so much interesting with the Ice Warriors, and the the Ice Warrior, especially this one, the Skulldug, it's actually not interesting at all. I mean, what kind of writing is that to say, okay, we have discovered an alien which is the greatest Martian ever been created in the whole history, the Skulldug. And that Skulldug, we actually don't even see why he is the, you know, the toughest Martian ever. We don't see, he has done nothing special. Okay, he's fast. But, you know, he killed 3 or 4 crew members and runs to you know, launch the nuclear bomb. He pretty much acts like an everyday villain. There's nothing special about him. And, you know, that crackling noise when Ice Warrior is near is brutal. It was so irritating. It was really, really irritating. And many things could have been better here. So many things. I mean, this episode has its own thrills and excitements, but usually it was just, you know, plain ordinary villain in a tight box. Well, what this villain tight was? Well, in survival horror genre, you have, you know, some sort of mansion or some sort of field or something similar where, you know, something is hunting you, you know, and something wants to kill you, and you know, even from that aspect, this episode is not that good. I mean, it wasn't that exciting to watch how Ice Warrior is hunting down those men and, you know, dissecting them. It wasn't fun at all. So, yeah. Now let's go further. What I liked about this episode. Regarding the dialogue, there weren't many good dialogues here. But there was one point of dialogue which I really liked. It is when, you know, Clara, afraid, speaking to that professor, I forgot his name, speaking to that professor, he is like saying, you know, since I started traveling with the doctor, it all seemed like a dream to me. But when I saw those dead bodies, it all became so real. I mean, that point I really like. It's really a shame there is not much more of that in this episode. I mean, it would be really great if, you know, we had, you know, to sense more of the Clara's fear, you know, that the Clara, how she overcomes her fear, how her fear controls her, something like that, something creatively written. Not just, you know, that point and, you know, her fear is really nothing, you know, nothing special, nothing at all. So, you know, I don't know what else good in this episode is. What else good in this episode is? I don't know, I really don't know. I can't think many of the good points. I mean, it's a good thing that we met a new villain, a new race finally in Doctor Who. It's not a new race, but it's a new race in the rebooted series, you know. And that this story actually ended. I mean, the plot haven't progressed not even slightly. We haven't learned nothing about Clara. We have not learned anything about what will lead to the last season. We haven't even seen the River Song at all. So, I guess, and what kind of thing is this? I mean, the Doctor comes to Clara and he says, you know, Clara, you're traveling with me now. You can see all the wonders of the world. You can see all the wonders of the universe. Anywhere in space and time, anywhere. I'm taking you to see the most beautiful places. I know what you're thinking. We're going to the Soviet submarine during the Cold War. Because of the reasons. I mean, why would they be on a submarine? Why? And TARDIS suddenly, you know, vanishing is really strange. I mean, Doctor in the end gives explanation for that because he has programmed the TARDIS to leave when the situation gets too dangerous. But I mean, in previous episodes of Doctor Who, TARDIS was much more dangerous sometimes, but he didn't disappear like that. Which is, you know, if it's just, you know, to help the plot progress, done. So in the end of the day, as I said, I really didn't like this episode, but it wasn't bad. I mean, everything else in this episode regarding the monster chase, the the whole submarine, the whole thing that's happening was just okay. It was, simple watch, but it won't be remembered for a very long time. It won't be remembered. There's actually nothing more for me to say. I mean, really nothing for me to say, except that I can't wait to see the next episode, because I have said in previous review that I really liked the writing of the Neil Cross, who wrote the previous episode. So he's writing this next episode, which is called Hide. I would really like to be something like Blink, but it probably won't be. But I'm saying I would really like to be something like Blink. So I can't wait to watch the next episode and to see what will happen. And I expect more of the plot progression in the next episode. I expect something more, because this was really just okay, nothing for me to analyze, nothing that there was me for the analyze. Every single character beside, Doctor and Clara were just simplified to the max, really simplified. And the big thing about this episode, is that, and this is maybe the good thing about this episode, which I forgot to mention. I don't know how I forgot to mention. This is the first thing I wanted to mention in this review. I have this feeling that Mark Gatiss wanted to recreate the feeling of the Cold War with this episode, but not the feeling of the army and sort of stuff. No, he wanted to keep the feeling how it was for the ordinary people on to live during the Cold War era. I mean, for the people living in the Eastern Europe and Russia and in US. As I realized, I mean, I haven't lived in that era. I was born when the Cold War ended, and as I realized when my father was speaking to me about all those events during the Cold War, they were just waiting for the moment when the nuclear bombs are going to start raining from both sides, and it wasn't the fear per se, they were like constantly living in fear, but there is always inside of them that thought that the World War is about to begin, that they will have to be mobilized for army and it's going to be catastrophic. And everything that stands between the World War III and peace, were that political dialogue between Russia and America. And this was similar to that. I mean, when the Doctor is having the dialogue with an ice warrior, and that speaking a dialogue is very much similar to in that point, and that's what he liked to create with this episode. It's only the Doctor, it's only his speaking, it's only his mind, that holds the ice warrior for clicking the button, launching a nuclear bomb. And for that point, he had really done it very well to create that feeling of how it was during the Cold War. How can sometimes the political argument can be really important, and it's really important when someone is having like this dialogue, so he can not just see himself as the political member or representative of the one country, but to see as the whole people of the world can suffer from the consequences if that dialogue. And as what we know, during the one point in in history, it came this close to the nuclear bombs to launch from the Russian side. So that's maybe the best thing about this episode. I mean, I don't know how I forgot to mention this, but this is the first thing I wanted to mention. So that's it. I mean, from my review. I hope you really like this review. It was really nothing special. The previous review was better because all those analyses I could analyze. This really hadn't had that much, I think, in it. But keep watching, continue to watch my reviews. I think the next week episode is going to be great, so expect a review next week, and see you until next week. Goodbye.